Record.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crimes and Closings. I'm Dia Kappelman.
And I'm Jenny Olsen-Baden.
And today I think we are both pretty healthy.
We are.
So we finally reached the first episode.
No, just kidding.
No, don't start now. We finally reached the first episode where we're both pretty healthy.
I'm hoping it's a trend.
It would be a nice change.
It would be. We're going into summer, so we might have allergies, but hopefully we won't have any of the winter like cold and flu.
Yeah.
So
wishful thinking.
Yeah.
So we are going to talk this time. You've got it, and you told me that we're going to talk about something kind of creepy, which worries me.
Of course.
You already tormented me with an unsolved one, and now you say it's going to be creepy.
So this one's not solved either.
Why? We specifically had a discussion.
Not only is it not solved, it's recent, as of 2017. So.
But it's not. Is it like ghost creepy?
Well, we could go off on that whole tangent. I'm not going to go off on this tangent. I actually have something saved for my next one that kind of ties the two together. So it's not going to be too ghost creepy. They just think that this town might be, there's been another murder that's been very famous in this town.
Okay.
And they think that it's kind of like a cursed town because it's kind of the idyllic, like perfect town. Everybody says it's like Mayberry. I mean, so there is like a supernatural element if you want to go down that rabbit hole, but I really don't, because I'm just more interested in the whole like murder,
gruesome murder sort of aspect.
Gruesome murders. Yeah. And this one does not have a murder. This one doesn't have a murder. The other one has a murder. This one is just a little creepy, and it's real estate related.
Nice.
I know. I'm like, I was doing my research. I'm like, what am I going to do this week? And then I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is it. I even watched the fictional movie based on this.
You did.
So I got all crazy with it.
I'm excited. Take it away.
So, all right. So I'm going to talk about the Watcher. And there's a Watcher house. It's on 657 Boulevard, which I know is weird. 657 Boulevard.
It doesn't sound real.
No, in Westfield, New Jersey. So Westfield, New Jersey is just this beautiful, like I said, idyllic place in New Jersey where everybody just kind of loves to be. The houses are in pretty good price range. I mean, they bought this house for almost 1.4 million.
Oh, wow.
In 2014.
Sounds Stepford.
Kind of Stepfordy, yeah. It's definitely, and there's some weird things that go along with this whole town and neighborhood that definitely go with the whole Stepford vibe. It was actually the 30th safest neighborhood in America at one point. So, and it actually, so in June of 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus ended up purchasing this house, like I said, for 1.4 million from the Woods family. The Woods family had previously lived there for 20 plus years. So very, very established. So Maria and Derek and their 3 children were set to move into this house. They had contractors there. They were doing a bunch of work. And about 3 days after the sale of the house, they received a letter. The interesting thing is that the letter was postmarked from the day the house closed. It was not public knowledge yet. It was not in, any of the records. So somebody close by knew what was going on. So 3 days after the closing, they received this letter in the mail. It was, nice little letter, clunky handwriting in the front that was addressing the envelope. Inside it was typed. And it was just a very strange verbiage. And this is actually, there's gonna be a lot of reading in this one because literally you just kind of have to hear what these letters say to realize how threatening and how weird this is. So this one says, dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. Okay, so you're thinking, oh, this is kind of nice. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with the forces within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I've been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched this house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. Now it's my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard?
Oh, no.
Why are you here? I will find out. Oh, it gets creepier. Now that they have it to flaunt it, they pay the price. Tisk, 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 bad move. You don't want to make 657 angry or unhappy. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I'm in one. Look at the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I'm in one.
Oh, no.
Oh, it gets creepier. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard and all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. So the letter goes on to mention very specific things about the Broaddus family. You have children, I've seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I've counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? I asked the Woods to bring me the young blood. Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call them and draw them to me.
I would move. Okay, sorry, keep going. Oh my
So, and then it was just signed in a cursive typewriting print font, the Watcher. Okay. So at this point, they're kind of like, oh, what the hell's going on? So they reach out to the Woods. The Woods are like, okay, we've lived here 20 years. We actually did get one letter, and it was just a couple days before we sold the house. It really was pretty innocuous. It was kind of like, hey, thanks for looking after the house for all these years. Best of luck. So they basically just threw it away. I thought it was just kind of odd, but threw it away. They didn't disclose it to them that a letter had come, but they didn't really even think about it. So they actually ended up going to the police with them, filed charges.
Yeah.
So the police were like, okay, well, here's the deal. You just need to be really quiet about it because it's probably one of your neighbors. So they're like, okay, great. So they kind of start paying attention to the neighbors. They still haven't moved into the house yet. So they're in the process of just doing renovation and stuff like that. At one point, this cracks me up, though it doesn't. I mean, I would be probably very terrified and stressed out. But at one point, they're actually showing the house to some neighbors. And they're just walking through, and the woman goes, it'll be so nice to have some young blood in the family or in the neighborhood. Something very, and of course, then they were just like,
get out.
You may leave now. But it turned out that it wasn't her. So it was just some weird thing. The Woods actually reported, they said they never locked their doors. They've never felt threatened. They've never felt watched. They just didn't really ever have any issues, 20 years. So then everything kind of goes back to normal. The workers are working. They're starting to plan the move-in. And on June 18th, so this was 2 weeks, they hadn't moved in yet. A second letter arrives. Same kind of thing. She actually goes to try to pick up some kind of, I think she was going to go approve some paint colors. She opens and checks the mail, sees the same letter, immediately recognizes it. This one was even more disturbing because she knew the children's names, or whoever wrote the letter knew the children's names. Not only their names, but their pet names from the family.
What?
Mm-hmm. The Watcher addresses the family as the Broaddus family. So they think they must have heard the name and maybe just mispronounced it or didn't know for sure how it was spelled.
Okay.
And they specifically mentioned seeing one of their daughters on the enclosed back porch painting on an easel. And so he references that, and there's very few places that you can actually see this enclosed porch and know that it was there.
Okay, so sorry.
No, you're fine.
So it has to be someone that's very close.
Mm-hmm. You would think.
And within earshot. So even though they haven't moved in yet, they're still around the house enough that the daughters.
Yeah, they were doing some work there, and the kids were like playing around and everything.
Okay.
And they said they were actively trying to become part of the neighborhood. Maria, who was the mom, actually grew up a few blocks from the house, was born and raised in kind of that same like adjoining neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So they were really anxious to become part of it, attended barbecues, started meeting friends, and were trying to spend some time there. But the workers were so busy working that they didn't feel they could truly move in yet.
Okay, so it could be someone that just knew the family, because in order to see the daughter on the porch, you had to see her.
Yeah, no, it was definitely triggered to the house.
Okay,
so the second letter said, 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all its secrets it holds yet? Oh no. Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone?
I am now.
I would be very afraid if I were them. It's far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream.
Oh my goodness.
Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the streets? I'll know as soon as you move in. It'll help me know who's in which bedroom. Then I can plan better.
No.
All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I'm the Watcher, and I've been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on, and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. and now you are too, Broaddus family. So that's where they misspelled or mispronounced Broaddus. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving day. I'll be watching. At this point, they decide to no longer bring the children to the home.
But they're still gonna live there?
They actually they never moved into the home.
Well, they're still following through with we're going to move in.
At this point, they were like, okay, we've got to do something. This is not okay. So they're really working actively with the police, even to the point where they've gone in and they were investigating. They pulled some DNA, very, very, very little DNA evidence off of the letters. They think maybe it was actually written with somebody wearing gloves. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Okay. So they're pretty much like, okay, we don't know what to do. We bought it for 1.4 million. We beat out other offers. So it was kind of a hotter market. They're like, we are not quite sure if we're going to be able to ever recoup our money. Not to mention all the repairs that they did to the house. So July 18th, 1 month after that another letter came, and it says, where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. The house is crying from all the pain it's going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what it used to be and the time in which I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard, when I ran from room to room imagining life with the rich occupants there. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father, but he kept watching until the day he died. And now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again. 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It's coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend, and now it's my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in the 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone. Okay, so this all happened within just a couple months of them purchasing the house. And so by the end of 2014, the investigation had essentially stalled. There was really, like I said, very limited DNA on the letters. What they did find, they did come back and say, we think it was a female that wrote it.
Really?
Yep. So there was a lot of weirdness, both with the planning and just with the neighborhood in itself. They all seemed very protective of this house, even to the point where the police would give them people to talk to, and the police would either never follow up or just almost immediately dismiss them as somebody that wouldn't be capable of doing that. And there's a couple of times when I get through the suspect, there was one suspect where everybody said he wouldn't do it, so therefore the police thought he wouldn't do it. I mean, so it's just very.
that's good police work. He said no, so
he didn't. So yeah, he didn't do it. So the family actually hired their own private investigators, including the FBI agent that Clarice Starling was based on from The Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
So, and at that point, they're like reviewing all the handwriting and all of the verbiage, and they're like, well, here's the deal. Obviously, they're a voracious reader. Obviously, they have a good vocabulary. They said that they didn't think they were going to ever follow through with the threat, but the way they don't know that because it was a lot of it was very passive. That doesn't sound passive to me.
Yeah, I'm wondering where the passive part is.
Yeah, I don't know either. But they said that the tone was erratic enough that there's a possibility they could. So there was no guarantee. It was like, yeah, maybe.
I'm sorry, if you're talking about my children screaming in the basement and what room are they going to sleep in?
Yeah,
that's enough for me to say.
Well, see, and that's so the parent in me would probably be that way. The person that was raised, the person with the Irish, the Irish temper and the Viking bloodlust wants to destroy whoever. I mean, how dare you? How dare you? But yeah, it's interesting. So the FBI just basically came back and they couldn't find anything either. So at this point, they are just beyond frustrated, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to have to try to sell the house. Mm-hmm. And he was like, it got bad because basically it was a time in which people were coming and offering, trying to make a deal and kind of benefit from these people and their situation.
So it was public because you said the police had told them to stay quiet. By now it was public.
Yeah, by now. And that was the interesting thing. So they actually picked up in 2015 that the Broaddus family was suing the Woods family for lack of disclosure. So
About the watcher?
about the watcher, because they got one letter, and because they got one letter and didn't disclose it, they decided to sue them for it.
But you could almost take that as like, it's a historic home. Somebody in the neighborhood was like, hey, thanks for taking care of the historic home.
Yeah, I've gotten weird letters before too, and I'm just like, you never know what people, So unfortunately, they did sue it. They did attempt to sue them.
Okay.
A small local newspaper ended up picking it up, and it just blew up. So all of a sudden, the quiet story was all over. So everybody under the sun knew about it. Everybody thought it was weird. I actually read the court documents and got most of the letter from those court documents. So not only were those court documents publicized, all this creepy stuff was publicized. So people started freaking out. The Today Show picked it up. I mean, there's tons of footage about it. It's very.
But people still wanted to buy the house for a deal.
For a deal. And that was, so he said a lot of investors were just coming in and being like, oh, we're gonna get it for a steal. Now there's a fair amount of the true crime community that would be like, I'll pay $2 million. I mean,
yes, that's what I'm thinking.
So I'm a little weird.
Some of you out there would say that's added value.
That's cool. So they just weren't able to find somebody.
No, as soon as you involve my kids, I don't care if you're selling it for $1.
Yeah. So it keeps going on. They're paying, at this point, they've sold their house. They're moving their old house. They're moving in with Maria's parents, so not too far. He's like, it was so frustrating because I'd literally have to go to the house and take care of it, and I could never move into it. So he's like, he recounts getting up in the morning and going and shoveling the walk and still not being able to live in there because of everything that was going on.
And that would have to be creepy to be around the house knowing that somebody's watching. I would be creeped out.
Yeah. So it was definitely interesting. So their stress level was through the roof. They decided to go ahead and sell the house. And the weird thing is that after they couldn't sell it to the investors, they didn't want to take that big of a loss. They decided they were going to actually separate and make it 2 lots. So somebody could demolish the house and create 2 lots on it. Okay. So they had to take that in front of the planning board.
A historic home.
Yes.
Okay.
The planning board shot it down.
Yeah.
Hours and hours and hours of deliberation, tons and tons and tons of them coming forth and talking about things. And they still unanimously decided they would not allow it, even though 2 weeks prior, there was a house just right around the corner. And the reason that they said they wouldn't do it was because it was going to be, the 2 lots were going to be 3 feet each, too small for the required neighborhood dimensions. Even though around the corner 2 weeks earlier, they had gone ahead and approved a splitting of the lots, the tearing down of the house.
Really?
And it was a bigger request, like a larger request, lot size wise, than the Broaddus family.
Then what was it about this house that they wouldn't do?
Don't know. So social media blows up. Everything blows up. People are like, I wish this was a time in which we could still tar and feather people. Those Broaddus people, they just are over their head. They're just horrible individuals. They're trying to destroy our neighborhood. I mean, so they got very vocal on social media and people were just tearing these people down. So Maria, who had grown up in the neighborhood, was like, this is ridiculous. I feel like you've now chosen the house over us.
Yeah.
And I've been part of this neighborhood essentially for years. So that got shut down. And they were just like, we don't even know what to do at this point. So they would search and search and search, and they were not able to find anyone to buy it. But in 2016, they found a renter. They disclosed everything to the renter. The renter had grown adult children, 2 very large dogs. They had put a bunch of cameras up, and the renter said, okay, we also have a clause that if we start getting more letters, we can get out of this lease.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So unfortunately,
there's more letters.
Shortly after they move in, there's another letter.
So while all of this litigation and everything is going on, were they getting letters or had the watcher?
The watcher had stopped.
Okay.
Yep. So shortly after, they ended up getting a letter in 2016. It was 2 weeks after the renters moved in.
Okay.
And the letters got creepier.
Oh, that's possible.
It starts out with the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my order to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher. Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away but makes you fall sick day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet.
What?
Loved one suddenly dies. Planes, cars, and bicycles crash. Bones break. You are despised by the house of the Watcher One. Okay. So surprisingly, the renters were like,
I'm done.
we'll go ahead and stay.
Are you serious?
Yes, they decided to stay with the prerequisite that more cameras were installed, which the Broaddus family did, and they ended up staying.
Well, I guess technically the Watcher is mad at the winch and
Yes,
her
and Gary,
husband, not the renters, because we're in pirate times. Did he also ask about his buried treasure?
Yes, where's the booty? Yes. And I love the fact that he's literally taking responsibility for everything. He's like, you stub your toe on that. He's like, it's me.
Do I have a Watcher then? Because everything he described about sounds like,
yeah, that's exactly right.
Wow.
Flat tire, me.
I am that powerful.
Yeah, he obviously, or he or she has kind of an ego issue. So finally, they were able to sell the house. They sold it in 2017 for $959,000. So they took almost a $400,000 loss. So it has been sold, and the new family has not reported anything, which is good.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's it?
That's it. But so now we're going to get into the suspects, because that's the story. The suspects, and the fact that they still don't know who it is. And there really are quite a few people that I'm kind of like, why didn't you explore them a little more?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one doesn't even have their names. I mean, that's how little they were explored. And wait until you hear this police work. And I am a huge supporter of the police. Do not get me wrong. But so basically the police were surveying the house one night, and a car pulled up and stopped in front of the house. We're talking like 11:30 at night. Okay. So they run the plates and they find it belongs to a young woman that lives a couple towns over. So they question her. She's like, oh, my boyfriend had the car that night. He lives in the neighborhood. Okay, that's great. He plays some really dark and disturbing video games. One of the video games, he's actually called the Watcher.
What?
Now, somebody brought up in one of the videos I watched that maybe they were just not understanding. And there's The Witcher, which was a very popular game at the time. So the police asked to interview him. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll show up. He never showed up. The police didn't follow up. We don't even have his name. So they're like, well, there's nothing concrete, so we can't bring him in. So
they don't even know who he is.
They don't even know who he is. So there's this Mr. Guy hanging out around here that, I'm sorry, and I know there was no true horrific crime. I mean, this is pretty horrific, but they just didn't seem to take it very seriously.
And I know they say it's not threatening, but when I come back to you're talking about kids screaming in the basement
that you can't hear.
To me, that seems like something police should get involved in.
And the kids are like 10, 8, and 5. So it's not like they're babies. Yeah, they're babies. So it's not like, hey, I want to know where your 17-year-old daughter is sleeping. It's, hey, where's the nursery gonna be?
Yeah.
So it's a little
yeah. Wow.
So
all right.
Yeah. So the second one, this again just cracks me up, is the neighbor named Michael Langsford. Langford. He lived next door with his 90-year-old mother.
Okay. Oh, already this seems to be fitting very well.
So an unusual thing about this is that several of her 60-year-old plus children lived in the house with her. Okay. So Michael had a history of frightening new neighbors, as he would often go walking through the yard and peeking through their windows.
That's not neighbor. That's
a little scary.
Yeah.
There was a history of him being, he was schizophrenic, or diagnosed schizophrenic early on in his life. And he was just very erratic behaving. Everybody that knew him swore he could never do that sort of thing.
So obviously he wouldn't.
So very, very suddenly, the police dropped Michael Langsford as a suspect. So then they were thinking, well, maybe it's his sister Abby who also lives there. because when they did the DNA, the very limited DNA evidence they had, when they did that, it looked like the fingerprint had become from a woman. So the DNA they felt was coming from a woman. So they started testing Abby. Abby was not a suspect or a match. So therefore they just completely dropped the entire Langsford family.
I mean, Alfred Hitchcock did a movie that was similar to this man. And
It didn't end well for his mother.
no, it didn't. It didn't. There's a shower scene, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we just dropped that. Everybody, like I said, nobody thought that he was capable of doing that. Therefore, he wasn't capable of doing that.
I would think if they tested her, if they had enough DNA from the letter to test and they
Yep.
tested her DNA, then they probably could, familial wise, if they were doing that,
Yep.
probably could rule him out that way.
That's what they were thinking.
If they did.
Yeah, they also thought about that. The other thing they did is they set up a trap. The family with the police basically sent them a letter saying, hey, we're going to tear down the house next week. Hope you're okay with that. And that elicited no response. So then therefore they were also like, well, maybe it's not them. So.
But that's not necessarily true because they were going before the board to have the house tear down. And the watcher didn't respond to any of that.
Yeah. So
that's, to me, that's not necessarily a test.
I know.
Okay. Sorry.
So
go ahead.
no, that's okay. So then there's the third, we're now to the third suspect. And this one takes the bus to crazy town.
Because the others didn't.
Derek himself.
What?
Yeah. So what happened is the Christmas of 2000, shortly after they went in front of the board and that blew up in social media, all of the families that were very vocal about disliking the Broaddusses received a letter. And that letter was signed from the friends of the Broaddus family. Derek admits that it was actually written by him.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
Had very similar verbiage, kind of like
Really?
the ones that were sent. So yeah, it was interesting. They claimed that maybe they'd gotten over their head. A lot of people wanted to know, and this doesn't make any sense to me. A lot of people wanted to know how the people over a matter of because they were in the early, just turning 40 when they bought this house,
Okay.
how people so young could go from a $315,000 house to a $770,000 house to a $1.4 million house. And his response was actually, he's like, this is America.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that happens.
We see that in our line of work all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, they think maybe that Derek did it, but then with the DNA evidence coming from a woman, that kind of rules that out. So that's why they've sat there and said, okay, we truly have no.
Unless she was in on it with him.
He swears that she wasn't, which of course we're going to believe that at face value. They did test both the Woods family and Maria, and neither of them tested, and neither of them were part of the DNA.
Okay, so then it probably
wasn't them. It probably wasn't them. The other thing that they shot it down was that shortly before they moved into the house, the Broaddusses bought the house. There was another family that got a very similar letter, and like the Woods family, they literally just tore it up and threw it away. And so they think that basically the police think it's been some big fluke, but I would have to say that the Broaddus family and their huge loss, not to mention the emotional strain, and I would say that they would want to take it a lot more seriously than the police seem to want to.
Wow, and that's all they have for suspects.
That's all they have for suspects.
Okay, I find it interesting that, and I'm not a profiler. Everything I know about profiling is criminal minds. So obviously, yeah, I'm like an expert. But it's interesting because as you're describing this, my first thought is it sounds like a guy.
Mhm.
You and I have even sat here through this calling
Him
the watcher
guy, yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And the police keep narrowing in on a man.
Yep.
So the female part is, I would be interested in someone's professional opinion on this because, I mean, well, obviously the FBI said it sounds like a woman, so I guess that is their professional opinion.
Mhm.
Wow, all of that to say, it sounds like a man.
I know. Yeah, it's very interesting. And the fact that he referenced, not his grandmother or his mother, it was his grandfather and his
then
father,
dad.
and now it's him.
So maybe we're picking up on those cues.
Yeah, and it could be. I mean, it's very strange. The other thing that was brought up about the Broaddus family was that they were trying to capitalize on like a media or a movie deal. And some of the truth to
Really?
that, and I read it and I went back and I could not find it. It's driving me crazy. So this might be well, actually for next week.
Okay.
There was a movie that was written and produced not too long ago, about the same time, called The Watcher. And it is very similar. It's basically like somebody heard this story and then decided to riff on it on its own.
Uh-huh.
And I vaguely remember, I remember reading something about that family, them suing, the Broaddus's suing about that movie, because of course they didn't get any money from it. And it got dismissed because it was actually, they said it was because it was a biracial couple. Number one, there was some other things, and this is the movie I watched. Okay. And it's a decent movie for a movie with Dee Harding. No, not Dee Harding. What's her name? Cujo, Dee Wallace.
Okay.
It was, it's an okay movie for that. But the person also calls himself the Raven. And there's a lot of similarities, but not enough that would be like, oh yeah, this is what's going on.
And so I guess you could say, yeah, they could be suing because they want the money for the deal, or they could be creating this for the money. But you could also look at it as they're underwater in this house that they can't sell. Maybe they're suing just to like
get out from under.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that there have been no other letters. And so, it kind of has that Amityville feel.
Yeah, that's when you were talking about doing movie rights and stuff, maybe they're seeing Amityville and thinking we could do something like that.
Yeah. So it's too bad that the dang, what are their names? Man, I'm drawing a blank. The Conjuring,
I don't know.
Okay, if you know who it is. I know you know who it is. Conjuring, Nun, all of that. Annabelle, it's gonna be, oh come on.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, I'm surprised that they didn't call people like that in. So yeah.
I am surprised somebody didn't pick it up.
Yeah. So and it's gonna be interesting to see how this whole thing ties into this other crime that I'm gonna do in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the okay.
So
I don't like when you do the.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I need resolution.
Yeah, the resolution is we don't know anything.
And it just to stop, and for it to stop for that entire time about raising the house, you would think that somebody who's so concerned about keeping the house would be like firing off letters every hour about where are you doing this to my house?
Yep.
Was someone out of town? Maybe they should check and see who was out of town during this.
There you go.
And where was the postmark? Was the postmark from?
The postmark was from basically it's the equivalent of like the Kansas City distribution. Okay. So it's the equivalent of that for New Jersey. So it came from the area.
Okay.
So yeah.
Wow.
That's interesting.
So next, after talking about renovations and how to fix your home up, let's talk about renovations that you can do. Although in this market right now, any renovations,
you almost don't want to do very many renovations because somebody else wants to come in and slap their.
Yeah, thanks to what's that one with
Chip and Joanna?
Yes. Everybody wants to come in. If it doesn't look like a Pinterest board right now, they want to make it into a Pinterest board.
Yeah.
So there are things that we would normally suggest as agents to our sellers. Mm-hmm. Hey, this is what you can do. There are some good things like have your HVAC system checked out. That way, you know ahead of time if there's going to be any major repairs. Yeah. Maybe have your roof looked at. Big ticket items. But as far as cosmetics, for me personally, I'm not recommending much to my sellers because a lot of buyers are wanting to come in and put their personal touches on it. What's your experience with that? So
as a short tail sales specialist, I try to get my people to spend as the minimum.
Yes.
What I always do recommend though, is that, most likely, and especially in this market, when you have a bunch of agents and you're waiting to get into a property, there's going to be time in which you're sitting in the driveway and you're looking at the house. So kind of spruce up the front. I mean, if there's a little bit of wood rot, go ahead and take care of that. Empty flower pots, just go ahead and put in the garage or pack up and get ready to go. Just know that somebody's probably going to be at the very least standing, looking at the front of the house while the agent is opening the lockbox. So just kind of spruce it up and, trim some dead bushes, things like that. So, and if you can, a lot of times my clients are not in a position to get the carpets cleaned or, do a big deep clean. But that's certainly for traditional sales, that certainly helps. Declutter, always declutter.
Declutter.
Remove personal items because Lord, you don't want another watcher situation from somebody that walks through the house.
No, it kind of comes down to basic stuff as far as just
Yep.
go ahead and declutter. Put your dirty dishes away for a showing, flush the toilet for a showing.
Put your medicines away.
Medicines, valuables, jewelry, yes.
Yeah. I walked into a house the other day and thankfully, I mean, my clients have been working with them for quite a while. And literally there were piles and piles of full pill bottles. And it's like,
Prescription.
Yeah.
I've walked into weed on the counter.
I've not had that happen. Not had that happen yet. That doesn't surprise me though.
No.
But yeah, no, it's amazing because you not only do you not want those prescriptions out there, but you know, you don't
want someone taking them.
Yeah. So
all right.
that's all we got.
I can't wait for you to do yours. We have to wait almost a month. We have to wait 4 weeks just to hear what your next one is.
Well, the good news is that it is solved.
Thank you.
It didn't get solved until 18 years later.
But at least it's solved.
It's solved.
Okay, I can handle that.
Solved. So you're good.
All right. Thank you. You're giving me a reprieve.
Yeah, I'm giving you a reprieve. And then the following, no, I'm just kidding.
No.
We're going to discuss John Benet Ramsey.
Oh no.
We're gonna
we can't do that.
No, we need a season.
We need a season for that. That'd be like the Scott Peterson thing. Have you heard that people talk about how the ways that he could not be guilty?
Yes.
And there's some really good points.
There's some very good points.
So,
and it's a little painful. Yeah, there's some of the bigger cases that like we are going to need a couple episodes to handle. So we're going to wait a little bit for that. But Casey Anthony is another one that kind of goes along.
I don't think there's any case to that.
No, there's not. That kind of goes along with the Kyler Yurst.
Yes,
that's going to be a little too emotional. But yeah, so we'll get a little bit deeper in, and then maybe maybe once a season we'll tackle something bigger.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and then have a couple episodes in which we kind of
and then go off suggestions, whatever you guys would like to hear first.
Yes.
Next week, mine is going to be your suggestion. So I'm very excited. And it's out in Missouri.
Ooh.
But I'm not telling you where because I don't want you to find out yet.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So, all right. Well, we will see you guys in 2 weeks. If you have any questions or want to suggest something, crimesandclosings@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, soon to be TikTok. We're actually going to start that, I think, next week. And of course, Facebook. So have a great rest of the week.
See you later.
Bye.